taking your audience questions. Send them through our website, davidpakman.com. Contact us or leave your questions via voicemail, 219-2-DAVID-P. Tony sent me a question saying, hypothetically, how would things have been different if there had never been a Bush White House and instead Gore had won? Well, I'll go to you first, Lewis. What would be the biggest difference?
Oh, wow. Well, this is huge because obviously we went to war under George W. Bush.
Right.
I think there's probably a much higher chance that we wouldn't have gone to war at all. I still think it
Not in Iraq, anyway.
Right. I still think it was definitely a possibility.
I think you're right. That's the thing that strikes me as most likely to have been different. Forget about, more broadly, that the culture of social politics would have taken a much different turn with 8 years of Al Gore versus 8 years of George W. Bush, especially when you think that it would have continued that uninterrupted phase from 8 years of Bill Clinton, and potentially if Barack Obama had been then elected afterwards. I know there's a lot of hypotheticals.
Which would not have happened if there were 8 years of Gore.
Oh, really? You think Obama would not have won if there were 8 years of Gore?
Probably not.
Why do you think that?
Just the way things have gone. I don't think anyone could have prevented the recession, which obviously would have been blamed on, at least the start of which would have been blamed on Gore.
So the recession was inevitable regardless of who was president, regardless of 8 years of policy. We were going to have a recession at that point. That's hard to know. That's hard to make that call.
I mean, obviously the defense spending was insane, and that played a role. But I mean, the same things that were happening with banks, loans.
It's possible, though, that an entire Gore administration would have had different people in place and would have reacted differently to the growing mortgage crisis, and that it never would have gotten to the point it got under George W. Bush. We can't say for sure that it was bound to happen that way.
We can't, no. But I mean, in hindsight now, things were already horrible at that point, and people just didn't realize it yet. The loans were being handed out left and right.
They were. But I agree with what you first said, which is the Iraq War is the thing that strikes me the most as what would Gore have done differently than George W. Bush.
Right. We could be living in a completely different world all around, not just our country, if Gore had been president and if that war had never happened.
What do you think, Natan? The biggest difference if Gore had been president instead of Bush?
Well, first let me say that I applaud the phrasing of the question, if Gore had been president, not if he had won the election. And then second of all, I'll say...
That's my phrasing. The question doesn't phrase it that way.
Well, I like your phrasing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And then I would say, apart from the wars and the reaction to 9/11 that probably would have been different, and maybe the reaction to the growing mortgage crisis, I'd say Gore probably would have pushed for action, especially in the first 2 years when they had a majority in Congress, on climate change. I think that the last 10 years would have been completely different in terms of the U.S. taking a leading role in that.
Right. That could have definitely changed the course of where we are now, where conservative media tries to put the kind of non-science attitudes about climate change up on the same pedestal as those based on science. That could have changed the course of history.
Absolutely.
All right. There's the answer. Keep the questions coming. DavidPakman.com.